The Alabama Booksmith presents Author Spotlight. Because every book in our store is signed, our Wall of Fame displays a breathtaking array of writers and signatures. Close-up shots reveal giants of literature, acclaimed historians, stars of stage and screen, our nation's leaders, famous sports heroes, and thousands of other esteemed authors. Today's Wall of Fame guest is Patti Callahan, who will discuss her new book, Surviving Savannah. And here is Patti Callahan with our host, Jake Reese.
Patti Callahan, we are delighted to have you here. Thank you for
so happy to be here.
And we're going to talk about Surviving Savannah, which, don't want to embarrass you, but we think will be one of the great books of 2021. Before we jump aboard, if you'll forgive me, Surviving Savannah, allow us to tell our audience a little about Patti Callahan. Patti Callahan is a New York Times best-selling author. Everybody knows that, with a long history of successful titles. Published as Patti Callahan Henry. And then, boom! In 2018, everything changed, including your name. You had spent 3 years researching and writing what turned out to be a blockbuster book about Joy Lewis, the wife of C.S. Lewis. Becoming Mrs. Lewis was named Book of the Year with a Christian theme. You won the Harper Lee Lifetime Literary Award.
Very proud.
Oh, as well you should be. We're proud of you. And after publishing 15 commercial winners, you found yourself becoming Mrs. Superstar in the world of historical novels. We're just about ready to dive into the new book, but frankly, we're also very excited about the story behind the story. Will you please share with everybody, with the millions watching,
I wish.
the spark, the genesis of Surviving Savannah?
I've always been interested in the story behind the story. I always want to know about the unseen more than the seen. And finding out about a lost story or an untold story is like having a secret whispered in your ear. Like you get to hear about something that everybody else has forgotten. And this was one of those stories. It's about the steamship Pulaski. They call her the Titanic of the South. And a local friend of mine who runs the marina in Bluffton, South Carolina, had told me the story of this shipwreck disaster for years. And I had said, that's lovely, that's lovely. And then one day he brought it up again. And I don't know why it hit me right at the right time, but I do believe in timing, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And so I started doing some research and said, wow, how has this story been lost to time? It was carrying all the elite of Savannah, Bluffton, Charleston, north for the summer, when it exploded off the coast of North Carolina. And I had never heard of it.
Okay. I'm all ready. I want it now.
Right?
I'm ready. You're 3 weeks
Yes.
into your research and writing this phenomenal, incredible story. And then, I hope I won't do this too loudly, boom!
Yep, exactly.
3 weeks, everything changes again. Let's chat about the remarkable discovery 3 weeks into your work that happened in the Atlantic Ocean.
Like I just said, in timing and in synchronicity. And as writers, we're a little bit superstitious, or most of us are. And so we look for signs that we're heading down the right path, or this is the story that wants to be told, or this is the what. Because when we make a choice to write a story, we're submitting to a few years to it. We better love it. We better feel like we're meant to write it. So I sat down at my desk that day and I was just piddling with it, trying to figure out who my main characters were, doing research on the families on the ship, trying to figure out what I call the door into the story. And I clicked, and this headline popped up. Steamship Pulaski wreck. Found. 100 feet deep, 30 miles off the coast of Wilmington, North Carolina, by Endurance Explorations. I got the kind of chills that go from here to here and down my arms and down my neck to the tips of my toes, and I said, this is my story. It wants to be told, which might sound a little woo-woo, but I felt that way. It has just been found, and somebody is down there, this company is down there, bringing up the silver and the gold and the artifacts and the things that people owned when they boarded that ship. And all of a sudden, it wasn't a vague story about a ship. It was about people.
That's phenomenal. And you didn't invest in that salvage operation. You didn't really know about it.
I didn't. I had no idea. No idea.
Oh, wow. Before bombarding you with specific questions, and I love the alternating between fact and artistic creation, share a broad synopsis of what's in store, the great divide between historical and fiction. What should we look for?
So the way I look at historical novels is I pretend they're a person, right? So if you look at the historical novel as a person, the skeleton has to be strong. Okay. The skeleton has to be built of the facts. And the facts were really hard to find because this shipwreck happened in June of 1838. So there was not one book about it. There were some chapters in books, but not one book. I had to dig through old file folders. I had to go to the Ships of the Sea Museum. I had to find old articles. I had to sift through microfiche and look for old articles about it and old accounts about it. Thank God for the Georgia Historical Society. So I spent years building the skeleton. And then the skin I always put on that person is the emotional truth of the story. And for me, the book ended up being about how do we survive the surviving. That was the emotional truth, that was the skin, and I was so lucky, fortunate, blessed, that I found a multi-page first-person account from a woman who was there. And that's where my emotional truth came from. And then the rest has to be imagined. The clothes we put on that person has to be imagined, but that imagination, I like to say, is more inspiration because it's informed by the research. So that's how and because this is dual timeline, modern day and historical, Savannah then and Savannah now mattered. So that research had to be accurate too.
You only spent 3 years checking it out.
I didn't think it would take that long. I kind of not jokingly say that if I had known what it was going to take, would I have written it? Probably, but
probably
it took a lot longer and a lot more digging than I thought.
Giving folks maybe just a morsel here and there. First, I want everybody to know this is a spellbinding read by master storyteller.
You're very kind.
Let's mention it, and he was a minor character in the book, but as you know in our conversations, he stuck with me since reading the book. During the sinking of the Pulaski, this person was called Noble Boy, and he performed nobly. Later in his life, he became known as the Red Devil.
Yeah.
And then he has a unique place in American history I think is going to stick with me forever and ever. So tell us about Noble Boy Red Devil, how he fits in the story, and end your description with his unique place in American history.
How he left us. So, as a historical fiction novelist, I'm always looking for the door into the story. Because the story can't be vague, right? It has to be about someone who wants something, who cares about something. The modern day story has to matter, and the historical story has to matter. And because the modern day story was about a woman curating the exhibit, she had to have her own story. And then the people that we follow on the ship, which it's important to say that we follow 2 women on the ship. Mm-hmm. But this young boy was related to these women. And when I discovered his story, he was my door into the story. He was how I knew that we, including the modern day character, were going to care about what happened that night on the steamship Pulaski when it blew up at 11:05 p.m. off the coast of Wilmington, North Carolina. Because that's interesting in itself, but it's not interesting enough unless we care about someone. So this little boy was 14 years old, the oldest of 6 on the ship. He survived. He floated 5 days and 5 nights on a piece of wreckage with some other family members. I'm not going to give anything away. And you know this right up front in the story. He helped others. He survived. He lived and he helped other people. And he was called a noble boy. We flash forward 20 years. He has flaming red hair, and his new nickname is the Red Devil for the horrific atrocities that he has performed in the world. One of the first things he did 20 years later, first he was a member of what was called the Fire Eaters, which was a group of men who were proponents for the Civil War so that they could keep their slaves. The second thing he did was commandeer the penultimate slave ship called the Wanderer, sailing the New York Pennant to the Congo to get 450 men to bring home as slaves. This is a boy who was saved from a shipwreck while most of his family perished. And it brought into sharp contrast the idea of meant to be. Surviving for a reason. You survived for a reason. Well, your family perishes? And then he goes and performs these horrific acts in the world. He was never punished for them. He joins the army to fight for the South. And this is the clincher in his story. He is the last man to die in the Civil War, shot straight through the heart in Columbus, Georgia, 5 days after Lee had already surrendered at Appomattox.
And that's real, honest to goodness history. It's in the books.
And when I found his story, I thought, who was this family? Why did he turn from noble boy to Red Devil? What the heck happened that night that he turned into this person and then got his just desserts? And the war he was fighting for was already over. What a metaphor. How ironic. So I chose that family to follow.
Well, while we're doing a quick rundown on real history, historical fiction, give us a little information about the man who built the Pulaski, the Titanic, of his day.
Of his time. So the man who helped build and finance the ship, his name was, you cannot make up this name, Gazaway Bug Lamar. And he helped finance the ship. He was a very well-known man in Savannah. He was a cotton producer. He owned a plantation. He worked for the banks. He was an entrepreneur. And he had seen very early that steam was the answer. This is early 1830s, late 1830s. And he invested in steam, including this steamship. She was beautiful. She was a luxury steamship. And her big brag was only one night at sea, because they would leave Savannah, sail all day, port in Charleston, pick up another passengers, spend the night in Charleston, and then sail all day and all night to Baltimore. Only one night at sea. Luxury, ease, but what we expect and what we get are rarely the same things. So Gazaway Bug Lamar, on the 4th journey of his ship, took his wife, his 6 children, one being the boy we just talked about, his 14-year-old, his niece, and his sister on that journey. A real family. So I changed their name to the Longstreets, and we follow the niece and the sister as we find out what happened to that family of 10 on the ship.
Absolutely.
And then the modern day woman is learning about the family at the same time because she's working just like I did with the shipwreck hunter. What are you bringing up this week? What have you found? What is under there? What is it telling us that we didn't know? And one of the craziest things that happened, there were a lot, but one of them was I chose 2 women to tell it from their point of view. One of them is Gazaway Bug Lamar's sister. I rename her Augusta because she was from Augusta. They found her luggage tag in real life. The shipwreck hunters found her luggage tag with her name on it at the bottom of the ocean.
You planned that. You put it
I know, right? I planted that. I put it in a book. So I know. It's crazy.
The whole. That's the coincidences.
Yeah.
We hope that we've already convinced everyone watching that this book is not elective, but is required reading.
Required reading.
Required.
I like that.
And we're going to pause now for a couple of important announcements. The first is to tell everybody about Patti's wonderfully entertaining show each Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on
7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central.
I watch it at 6.
We watch it. I do it at 6. Yeah, it's at 7 Eastern.
Thank you. 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. Those of you on the Pacific Coast, figure it out.
Yeah,
but, great. And if you're in London or Istanbul, whatever. But it's great. Go now to Friends and Fiction, where Patti and her writer buddies, and they are Mary Kay Andrews, Kristen Harmel, Christy Harvey, and Mary Alice Monroe, and they hold the fort. They talk about books, they talk about bookstores, and they have done events at some of the greatest bookstores in America. And they have regularly hosted big, huge name writers. Great show, great writers coming up, so go there. Now, Friends in Fiction, I am, as you know, I am a regular viewer, and I suggest that everyone watching this interview will enjoy it. These guys, this show already has, and bad as I am to exaggerate, we know this is history, tens of thousands of followers, and I've told you several times, before long it's going to be 1 million.
From your mouth,
it's a great show. I love it. And now we have breaking news with 3 exciting reasons why you should buy your copy of Surviving Savannah here and now. Number 1 is it is a signed first edition at regular price. The next motivation comes with a short video. When we began this interview, we mentioned that the Pulaski wreckage was discovered and divers salvaging treasure that had been buried for almost 200 years. Micah Eldred, CEO of Endurance Exploration, the company that brought these precious prizes back to the surface, is giving one to a surviving Savannah reader. Everyone who buys their signed first edition from the Alabama Booksmith will have their name put in the pot, and one lucky reader will receive this treasure. It's certified number 4479209-009. Sealed, keepsake, and certified. And finally, the piece de resistance, inspired by the salvage operation. Every signed first edition bought at the Alabama Booksmith comes with this surviving Savannah good luck coin. That's on heads, surviving Savannah good luck coin, and tails, the Pulaski disaster, 1838. And that's, of course, while supplies last, so hurry. Whew. Patti, please excuse the commercials, but we thought folks watching would want to know about all the goodies. Congratulations on your amazing, amazing, amazing book, and thank you so much for taking time to visit with us today.
You know how much I love talking books with you. We could do this for another couple hours. You up for that,
Mike? Let's check with our producer and check with everybody watching. How about another couple hours?
No, I guess not. They said no.
Well, we thank all of you for watching the interview and the commercials. You may purchase signed first editions of Surviving Savannah along with your special gift good luck coin and a chance of winning the very, very valuable formerly sunken treasure by going to alabamabooksmith.com.